Hello, future designers of India and beyond. Welcome to Design Dialogues by Mu.S.Ex, that is Musings Partial Experiences. This is another episode where we are exploring architectural careers in futurist India. I'm your host, Devika Vyani, and today on this enriching conversation, we have two amazing founders of Boomaja Creations. Boomaja Creations is a people-centric architectural studio. We are having a conversation with two pillars who focus on narratives of people, for the people, by the people, inspired by people, and going back to the people to empower the people. So it's a very interesting combination of approaches that both of them bring together for Boomaja Creations. I would like to first welcome both of our co-founders for Boomaja Creations, that is Manasi Pulyapatta and Guru Prasad Rane. So these architects are unique in their approaches, and welcome to this space, welcome to this episode of Vernacular Architecture by Design Dialogue.
Thank you very much for the invite.
It's wonderful to be here today. It's our honor. Considering the parallels between sustainable and vernacular architecture, I'm curious to understand what are your thoughts on the similarity of elements that make up sustainable and vernacular architecture. And how do you think that the integration, which is very inherent, like you can't isolate sustainable from vernacular, you can't isolate the land of the first. So when you can't do that, they both influence each other. And I am curious in understanding how that has influenced your perspective.
See, vernacular architecture of a place is something that common people face without the help of professionals over centuries. The simple, indigenous design solutions they gave just by addressing the basic need. That's something we always find fascinating.
Correct.
Now, when you talk about these vernacular architecture technique, most of these were in the pre-globalization era,
Correct.
where the availability of material was very much localized. The electrical machineries and other things were not available at that time. And people used to do things with whatever they could find locally. Also, the methods of construction were very much I would say low-key, without machineries. So all these aspects actually make these techniques very much sustainable in today's day.
Also localized, right? The processes were extremely localized. You didn't have machines to transport.
Exactly. And but today what has happened is like all materials are available from all different parts of the world, and during this time of globalization, I think there was a kind of a gap in between, wherein anybody was able to procure any material and do anything what
Correct.
they came up with. That's the reason why we can see so many of these concrete boxes coming up, even in all the small villages around us.
Result.
So, but then whether these structures really correspond to the, maybe the local climate or the local culture, there's a question mark on it. So,
I remember when I was a kid, I was staying in a 200-year-old house, and all my cousins and my friends had new concrete houses by then. So I can still remember the dichotomy in that in the 10-year-old me whenever I visited those houses. So because if the new is considered to be better.
I don't know why we do that, right?
Why are in these new posh houses are not even as comfortable as my old house? So that confusion, or that contradiction.
Yeah, exactly.
Contradiction always that instilled that belief in me that these two are vernacular and sustainable are actually deeply interwoven as concepts. It is it cannot one cannot exist without the other, like that. So
Beautiful.
And many of the solutions that we when we start practice, basically we practice sustainable architecture and then whenever we are looking for a solution, most of the solutions are available in the vernacular architecture. We just need to look at it carefully and implement it in a refined manner for the today's context.
Interesting. So one part of the intention behind this podcast, the vision is to bring out conversations which are not being conducted or curated, Dialogues which are missing from architectural colleges, but are important for the growth of architectural studies. So getting to the pedagogy part of it, I would like to understand, so when I was studying vernacular, I did not even get to study vernacular as a student. I studied it on my own later. But for those who are getting introduced to these in their curriculum, I'm curious how do they deliver it? Because what happens is there's a lot of traditional element, there's a lot of sensitivity that one needs to carry when you're doing vernacular architecture, because you're carrying legacy. You're carrying cultures and traditions and reflecting them in your curated pieces. So there's a lot of culture that goes into curating. Current architectural pedagogy mechanizes the process. Before in my college. But this is the conversation I needed to have to understand that, okay, vernacular is this. So it was missing. So what are your thoughts on how can we continue the truest sense of architect vernacular?
See, like talking about our education system and how we, we were introduced to it. For us, see something which is like 22 years back, it used to be like certain subjects and then going for visits to these places. But then those visits used to be like a basic initial introduction only. We were never getting into much of a detail.
Correct.
But then simultaneously, this is my personal experience. Unfortunately, there used to be these NASA competitions where there used to be certain trophies and where we used to go and document. I think these documentations, which I must have gone for at least 4 years, and it was to be like one month long visits for one particular place. So you go there and document it and you study it in a real detailed manner. And those are the ones that actually helped me to understand vernacular architecture. So my first visit was in a sawmill at Andaman. Second visit was a settlement in Himachal. Like that, then I came to Kerala as well. So every time we go to a new place, and all these were all different locations here. So that actually set the base for me to understand these things further.
Do you resonate with that one? Do you think you had similar experience?
Not. I'm always jealous for you for those experiences. I never had that experience. When considering education, I always think that from a small age we have to develop critical thinking. Children, we really need to go behind the mainstream. The things put in front of you are the only things you have in front of you. So when we consider our practice, it was a conscious decision we took to explore the indigenous construction methods and incorporate in our practice. It was what and all we never thought that.
So you did not get that serious.
Yeah, we took our interest and we did our research, and then we implemented it.
So you see, we see the disparity right between this conversation, right in front of us, right here. Because I'm a person who's never taught vernacular in my curriculum. He has been taught extensively, and you haven't been introduced as well. So this goes on to show that it's missing. It's not as solidified as it should be for the benefit of students. And what the outcome of it is that we're not developing the sensitivity that we talked about previously. So imbibing processes like yours, that like the processes and experiences your college curated for you becomes important. But management today has their ways and methods, which are okay. I'm sure they put a lot of heads in curating it. But would you suggest that something like that should be imbibed more often?
No, actually, those processes are still there. We still have these NASA competitions happening and students going. But then, see, again, those visits which I mentioned, those were not the whole class used to go. It used to be like selective people who were interested, people who it was voluntary. So it was actually extracurricular. We were supposed to go and do this extracurricular, come back, and then we were given some 40 days time to complete all the submissions. But then that's part of it.
But to bring politics into it a bit, like what we have our best leaders doing for India today, they're trying to preserve the culture. You can't make teachings of vernacular voluntary, is what I believe, because while it is okay to pick students and allow them to pick their interests, something like this imbibes a lot of sensitivity. So you should have them as basics, and then you go on to progress wherever you find your pick. So that is the thing, right? If it's this voluntary of a process, I'm going to miss out. Students are going to miss out. I did miss out. Entrepreneurship. It's a personally important question for me as well. As an entrepreneur in training, and I feel like most our architects listening, tuning in with us right now are entrepreneurs in making. So what was your journey like in that domain? What were your challenges? What was the vision? What fueled you? What were the milestones and all the stories?
So our journey began in the year 2011 when we finally started living the dream of ours of having that architectural practice which is site-specific, people-friendly and environment-friendly, along with our agriculture and other interests. So we began as a small residence come office, having very few works scattered all over Kerala in remote places. So as we involved a lot of R&D, as we told earlier, in Pond and all, travel was always the norm of our lives. And with our son as old as our practice, it was nearly seen the And anyway, in 2019, we put an end to our nomadic life, and we now have our office at a small farm situated near the south of Palakkad district.
It's lovely.
Talking about the farm, it was something out of an interest. Okay, it existed there before, but we never used to cultivate rice or anything paddy over there.
Okay.
And it happened like once the workers were basically whom we were training in earth construction, they had no work because it started raining. Now, most of the time during monsoon, the earth construction work stops, and then they were like, okay, we'll go back home then. Yes, they were going back to Banganga.
Correct.
So we just happened to, okay, what you will do over there? They said, okay, no, we are no kheti karenge wahan pe. They said, no, okay, kheti karna to yahan pe bhi kar sakte, chalo karte. And that's how we actually started. So it happened like it became like a substitute, because many of the workers who work in Kerala are these days coming from the northeastern states.
Correct.
And they don't get work during the monsoons.
No.
And especially when they work on our sites wherever it's earth construction. And then we started kind of replacing, the architectural side with farm work in these 2-3 months.
Nice. Very interesting, right? Yes, I'm happy to understand this perspective and bring that to our students actually, because not a lot of us are aware. I, as a fresh professional, was not aware of the impact of transactional approaches on the whole money aspect of life and entrepreneurship. Thank you so much for answering this question so beautifully and comprehensively. We're talking about vernacular architecture, but we have two people sitting with us having this conversation who also have enlightened us in regards to contemporary vernacular architecture. So this is something that even I'm beginning to understand. So I would like to kind of correct and check where am I in terms of my understanding. So from what I understand of contemporary vernacular architecture was supposed to be practiced, and it defined in a way where it is being done by the people themselves. So it's done by themselves for themselves. They're very independent, self-sufficient from that. Today, in the life that we live and then the world that we live, commercialized again, we can't source our own materials, we can't do everything alone. So there's a lot of modern approaches to the same process, complementing, designing it in a different journey, but the roots are the same. And you're still getting inspirations in the traditional materials and everything. Within process, we start on the same vernacular materials, but the journey is contemporary. So I think that is when a contemporary vernacular architecture comes. So am I correct?
It's not only with the materials, even with the planning. Now, if you look at the vernacular buildings, you can see so many verandas around. Yeah, they used to be there, because of the agricultural activity. People used to come and bring the grains and store over there. They used to dry it off and things like
Correct.
that. Nowadays, we don't do that.
No.
So we don't really need such a long verandas. So then when we design it, we have to, well, of course, there are clients coming to us and asking, I want real veranda on all the sides. Then come on, you're not going to utilize it so much. So let's cut it down to whatever you really need. So we have to, of course, we are inspiring from the vernacular, but then we have to take it in the current context. So whatever is really necessary today,
We stick to that.
strip that.
So when you talked about, how 2011 you finally began living the dreams of your life, which was Bhumija, I want to understand from when you completed your architecture till the point of when you started Bhumija. How was that? What was the number of years between that?
It was 6 years after mine.
Correct. So students, I dial back to this one of the coordination, especially for you guys. It takes a certain amount of time in the industry to develop the maturity of handling your own dreams. You need to prepare yourself to handle your own dreams. So a lot of young students, they are setting up architectural offices immediately, and that's great and lots of confidence. But it takes a certain amount of grooming. It takes a certain amount of faith in the process. So wherever you are, whatever you are at stage in your life, just know that a little bit of patience is going to bring a lot of fulfillment for you in the long term. So if you are in the process of setting up your own architecture business, let me invite you to consider a real life example from not just this conversation, but from all our entrepreneurs and architects who've come up in these episodes, that it takes time. It's okay to give things that kind of time, and just hold on, okay? Your dreams are going to come in place. I am very curious to understand, how do people react to your theories? How do people react to your proposals of contemporary vernacular? Do you have clients who are like, no, we just want a simple thing? Or do you have clients who are just like, okay, what is this? Or do you have clients which go like, no, but then you manage to enroll them into your vision later on?
Most of them come to us for sustainable architecture.
Okay.
So it can take any form actually. So when when we discuss with the clients regarding the requirements, the brief, the site context, we basically evolve the design along with the clients. It's not possible to have mud buildings everywhere. It's not possible to have a particular style implemented in all the thing. So depending on the site conditions, we come up with a design brief along with the client and come to a conclusion. Okay, this might be the style that we go for. As long as there is a good reasoning for implementing it, the clients are okay.
Makes a lot of sense.
But there are cases where clients have come and said, okay, we would not like to have something like this. But then what happens? We kind of accept it, because after all, they are the end users. We don't need to really force anything onto them. Yeah.
People-friendly architect.
In the sense, I feel the journey from 0 to 1 is always the easiest. When you have one work complete and people go and see that and come to you, you don't have to, convince them as such. They are coming convinced.
Yeah, that's also there.
What you said, 0 to 1 is like, I'm going to take a whole day to digest.
When we did our first mud building, it was a lot of effort. Then people started looking at that building and then Because, and also our experience has been we have our office made out of rammed earth. So sitting in a rammed earth building, it is easy to convince them, okay, go for something sustainable. But if you're sitting in a concrete building, you cannot do that.
See, the thing is, even we don't want people to compromise anything for choosing sustainable. We have to give them
defeats
everything.
The purpose.
Yeah, that's what. So if they themselves realize that it is as comfortable and it is better in any way, so everyone wants
cherry
this.
on the cake.
Yeah. So
right. What is the feasibility and viability of vernacular from a place of large-scale design? So currently, the techniques that we have, the methods that we have towards practicing vernacular, the practices we have, are they something that you can carry and channel into long-term or large-scale projects? Or is it something that's highly localized to smaller scales? And if we are looking at a future when these principles of contemporary projects and we can take it at a larger scale. What challenges are we awaiting at our doors?
I think the scale in terms of the number of floors define a lot. Because if you see the vernacular architecture, it used to be always limited to maybe G+2, G+3.
Correct.
So also the visual scales are to those proportions only. Now it's only when the concrete and steel came in, we started making high rises. So as long as the design brief do not require you to go high rise, I think it is achievable.
Okay. Interesting. Ma'am, what do you think?
See, I feel take the values from the vernacular architecture. The things reflected in vernacular architecture was the values they used to practice in those days. Be it reduce or reuse or recycle. That was their way of life. So take that into, take the core thing and then design it, whatever it is. Use, see, in Bhumija, what we usually think is, see, design sensibilities lie not only in using sustainable materials, but using all materials sustainably. So,
So that's very interesting. Something very important to consider when you're practicing something like this on whatever scale. How can our students be taught to handle contemporary and the traditional together? What do you think are the threads which will help them handle both of these responsibly? Well, they're not looking at these two as extremes. Instead, they look at these two as pillars of the same foundation for the same building. So, what do you think? How can they make sure that they are connected to the roots, but they are connected to the modern?
When you say modern and vernacular, okay, see, vernacular is something which has already passed. It's past. Now, when we practice, see, if you say whether I am practicing vernacular architecture, no, I am not practicing vernacular, because vernacular is practiced by people in a different age. The whole idea about vernacular is it has to be organic, it has to be site specific, made by the locals only, without architects.
Okay.
Yeah. So I cannot see, when I start practicing, it will no longer remain vernacular. It will become
contemporary vernacular
for today's. Yeah. Now, if somebody is doing something modern, but still they can utilize certain concepts out of the olden times and implement it. It need not look vernacular. It need not look traditional style.
There are values there.
Yeah. So it could be just at the planning stage. It can be just like a facade with some jali works.
Okay.
Yeah, but then see, those are, of course, it need not be like a new invention. It has been already invented before, but then you can reinvent the wheel if you want in the current subject.
So I think how I would summarize it for our students is that take the inspiration, understand the inventions, and reinvent. All right, so moving on to the fan. So this is something that covers my second question, which is what advice would you give to the students? So that was a very nicely, a good combination addressed together. My final question to you would be, what impact do you wish to create in this world through your work? Both of you.
3 basic needs. Food, clothing, and shelter. Now the food and the clothing we cultivate. So, but then when it comes to shelter, we often tend to mine it.
Okay.
Mining is a limited option. One day it is going to finish.
Correct.
Cultivation is something infinite. It will keep on generating. In past, we used to cultivate at least part of our homes. Be it thatch roof, be it wood. Now, in between, somewhere we started saying, okay, wood is going to miss cutting trees, spoiling the environment. But then if you start cultivating trees, you are going to get an endless supply of building material. You need to plan. Earlier, people used to do that. People used to plant trees for the next generation. And then the next generation used to use the wood and make the homes. Right?
So carry it that.
Yeah, and if you see, today there's a big business of carbon fixation. Like you grow trees and get money for it. There are there are countries, European countries, who can't plant trees in their place. They are giving it to letting it to outsourcing it and and then this particular material, the wood or the bamboo, I would say bamboo would be much more efficient in that because it goes very fast. So if we get into that kind of a mode where we start cultivating our building materials like wood and bamboo and using it for our structures, I think we're going to solve a lot of our environmental issues. Construction sector is we're trying to put this idea of using more and more bamboo and more. Of course, wood is becoming expensive, but then if we channelize the resources properly, maybe at government level or at a bigger scale level, and people start cultivating, definitely the cost can come down. And
that's one big vision.
The move towards sustainability.
I mean, that's one very, very nice vision. I am already very sure, and I think you guys already know that you've already started creating that impact, and we're happy to kind of fuel that journey through this podcast. It was lovely to hear these so creative and so such depth in the conversations we could, like the insights you shared. I'm going to take a lot of time to process all of it. I'm going to find myself visiting Kerala and visiting your studio. So thank you so much for a very enriching conversation. Stay tuned for the next episode. We're going to dive into many more disciplines of architecture beyond the mainstream architecture. So students, listen up. You want to be tuning in. You want to continue to stay with us. All right, so stay tuned. This is Design Dialogues by Mu.S.Ex, shifting design perspectives and exploring architectural careers in futurist India. Stay happy, stay smiling. Bye-bye. So the students tuning in with us, I want to assure that hold on to your dreams. You just need a couple of years in your pocket. You just need to give it time, trust the process, and you'll be there.
When we work in other offices, see, the moment we come out of our colleges and we start practicing, definitely we're going to make mistakes. And when you make mistakes in somebody else's office, there are others who take care of it. But then when we start with making mistakes in our own practice, those are our initial work. And if we fail over there, if we make mistakes over there, it is definitely going to reflect in coming marks too. So it's always better to spend some time in somebody else's office, get experience, make mistakes over there, and then start.
It's always best to get the foundation right, build roots, and then start growing.